Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with the latest episode of Code Reds, everything Cincinnati baseball. My pleasure and honor to welcome one of the best beat writers in the business, covering the Cincinnati Reds for the Cincinnati Enquirer, as well as, of course, Cincinnati.com, Gordon Wittenmyer. Gordon, thanks for taking time out.
Anytime, Mike. Appreciate it.
So let's get right to it on these 13-10 Cincinnati Reds as we record this podcast. I think actually, as a Reds fan or as a close follower of the ball club, you got to be pretty satisfied with the start this team has gotten off to, given how many critical pieces are out of the lineup right now, both pitching and also, of course, in the everyday lineup.
No doubt. And I'll give you a stat that backs that up. So we know that a couple of years ago, they had that horrible 3-22 start, lost 100 games. And then even last year, when they wound up in a playoff chase, they started off 7-15. So you're thinking, well, so it's been at least 3 years since they had a winning record kind of out of the gate. Actually, when they won Tuesday night, it clinched a winning record through 25 games. They haven't done that since 2013, which maybe not coincidentally was the last time they won 90 games. So it's not insignificant. Maybe it's very significant. What we all know is it's a long season.
It is indeed. And in a long season, Gordon, and you've been around baseball long enough to know, you've got to have the pitching. And it's not just your starting five. It's not just the closer and the setup man in the bullpen or, four or five pieces in the bullpen. David Bell has said this on numerous times. You've got to have more pieces than that come up and contribute throughout the season. What it has impressed me about this Reds team is I don't think they're pitching necessarily. The statistics certainly don't indicate that. Their starters are 8-7, 4.08 ERA. The relievers 4-3, 3.92. Those numbers don't blow you out of the water, but they're finding ways to win games.
I tell you what, they blow you out of the water compared to last year. That rotation ERA last year was about 5.5. They were one of the worst three. In fact, of the bottom six in rotation ERA last year, they were the only ones that didn't finish in last place. That's how sort of ridiculous everything else went right for them to get them in a playoff chase near the end. The fact that they're competitive with their starting pitching and they're getting the job done again with their bullpen night after night is just all by itself a world of difference from last year. And I've written this before on the last road trip. I kind of looked at these guys and said, maybe this is the best rotation, maybe even pitching staff that nobody's talking about. I mean, people talk about the Yankees. People talk about, they used to talk about the Dodgers until everybody got hurt. They talk about the Phillies. All these contenders with superstars and 9-figure salaries in their rotation get talked about. Nobody talks about these guys, but they go legit 6 deep. Now, that's just assuming Frankie Montas is only a short-term IL deal. They go legit 6 deep with some starters who can give you a competitive day out there. And that's not even counting Brandon Williamson, who opens on the IL, a rookie last year, who got better down the stretch. And so you got to like the depth they put together. And I do think it's going to keep them in games all year long, and that it's going to put them in probably roughly no worse of a position than they were in as they headed down the stretch last year.
And you know why that's critical, Gordon? You were on the beat last year at the end of the season, and you saw a bullpen because the starters couldn't consistently get into the 5th and 6th innings. You saw a bullpen that was just depleted. And I think a couple of things. First of all, I think they knew that they could have a reset at the start of this 2024 season, and they added 1 or 2 pitchers to the rotation. Nick Martinez, I think, was a very valuable addition by Nick Kroll in the offseason. And they added some veteran arms in the bullpen. And I think having veterans who have been around the game and thrown in the bullpen matters a little bit more than younger pitchers who are still finding their way. And look, the way Brent Suter has started this season, very, very encouraging. Obviously, we've seen what Fernando Cruz has done, and Emilio Pagan. Those certainly Cruz was with the team last year, but Nick Martinez, Emilio Pagan, and Brent Suter, those three additions to the bullpen have really allowed, I think, David Bell some flexibility here early in the season.
No doubt. And if you go back to the trade deadline last year, throw Sam Moll in there, left-hander who did great down the stretch for them, and now he's back off the IL. Him coming back gives them a nice balance in that bullpen. It gives them three lefties, which is something. At times last year, they had one lefty, and they still got the job done from a bullpen standpoint. They had a bullpen full of guys that were literally rejects, and I mean guys that had been waived, guys that had just been flat released. Fernando Cruz, who you talk about, who might be their best pitcher in that bullpen. Best stuff was a guy that was a 32, 33-year-old rookie last year because he banged around so many places and didn't quite find a fit and stick.
Right.
And so now he's one of your most valuable guys. When they went into last offseason, the biggest thing that the biggest upside thing that they did not do was kid themselves. They could have easily said, well, we got all these guys that were hurt last year that are coming back, and boy, did we have a good bullpen. No, they didn't. That bullpen overachieved, and the guys that were coming back from injuries, great. Yeah, sure. Count on that health. But then that just means other guys are going to get hurt because that's the way a season works. So when they went in and filled holes, they didn't just fill out the end of the five-man rotation. They didn't just fill out the end of that eight-man bullpen. They doubled down. They doubled down to the point that Brandon Williamson, if you absolutely needed him, you could fast track him through this injury, this IL stint, but you don't. So you let him take his time, and he'll be some depth for you down the road. The bullpen guys, they had a dilemma. Mike, you were there. You know, they're talking about, well, what are we going to do when Ian Jabot comes back, right? It turns out Sam Moll came back before, but what are you going to do? Well, we don't want to lose guys from the organization. There's only a handful of guys on that pitching staff that have options. They were saying, we can't option Cruz. We can't option Alexis Diaz. They're the only two guys in that bullpen that had options. So they started looking at starting pitchers, man, that they were looking at starting pitchers with options, which are four guys, right? That Ashcraft, Lodolo had just come back. It wasn't going to be him, but Ashcraft, Hunter Greene, and Andrew Abbott. All those guys are valuable. But they were actually having discussions that had them in play to be optioned out for Ian Jabot. That's where they learned from their experiences last year. They did not have enough pitching by a long shot. They were lucky the bullpen did what it did, and they doubled down on their depth coming into this year. And if they have success over this long season, it's going to be because of that.
Look, what impressed me the most in that 8-1 win over the Philadelphia Phillies on Tuesday night at GABP was not the Ellie De La Cruz bomb to the opposite field, or even Ellie De La Cruz going 40 yards down the left field line and making a catch. Well, I've come to expect the sensational from Ellie De La Cruz. Maybe that's unfair, but I have. Okay, I'll just put that out there. What impressed me the most were the two batters Fernando Cruz retired in the highest leverage possible situation, if you can have such a thing with a 5-1 lead. In that fifth inning, that was a very difficult spot, and you had Trey Turner, the number 2 hitter, and you had JT Realmuto, the number 3 hitter, and Cruz comes in and gets those two batters out. I credit David Bell, and I asked Bell about this after the game, getting him ready that quick for that situation, and Cruz responding the way he did.
That's why I said he might be your best reliever. That's his role more than anything else. You know, they used to call the top reliever in a game the fireman of the year and all that because he came in and put out fires, because it was a different animal back in the day when that came about. You used your relievers in hot spots when you're now relievers all have their roles, or they all have their lineup pockets. But to have a guy who can truly be a fireman come in when the flames are the hottest and put out the fire, those guys, there aren't very many of them. And to be able to identify a guy with the kind of stuff that can do that, come on, strikeout pitcher. I think he's got the best strikeout rate on the team. He had bases loaded, nobody outs. Two, like you said, 2-3 up in the order, including a 9-figure guy to face right off the bat with less than 2 outs. And he gets these guys out. That's what he does. He loves those moments. He's the best on this staff at it. He's probably one of the best in the league at it. And I would say go back to that unsung thing. He's definitely the best in the league that nobody knows about, right?
Yes, I would absolutely think that would be the case. Certainly in the conversation of a short list of names. Talking with Gordon Wittenmyer of the Cincinnati Enquirer and Cincinnati.com, covering the Cincinnati Reds. Gordon, I want to ask you your impressions of Nick Lodolo. He, as we record this, is going Wednesday night starting for the Reds, his third start back from his left calf issue. And of course, he missed most of last year with a left leg stress reaction. What has impressed you the most? Is it the 12 strikeouts and just 1 walk? Is it his command of the strike zone? Is it his ability to bury that breaking ball down and in at opposing right-handed batters' feet? What is it?
Well, I took over this beat in June of last year, and he was already on the IL. I never saw him pitch in a game last year, and I hadn't seen him. I covered the Cubs before that, and I'm trying to remember if I saw him as an opposing pitcher, but whatever it was, I didn't pay much attention to him. Everybody told me this guy might be the best pitcher on the staff, might have the best stuff in that rotation, and this is a rotation with Hunter Greene, right, with the 100 miles an hour and the whole thing. So spring training, when Lodolo's throwing his bullpens and his live BPs, I took a couple of days where I took a few minutes out and just kind of bore down watching him. And I remember my first impression when I saw him at full speed in one of those live BPs was like, oh man, this is what they're talking about. Coming at you from all these angles from the left side and the stuff just snapping off. And so, okay, well, then he didn't open the season on time and we come in. To get to your question about what's impressed me the most, that he's able to take that after almost a year, not throwing in a big league game and barely throwing in professional games, and be able to command all his stuff. We watched Hunter Greene, his command comes and goes start to start as he's healthy, right? Every 5 days.
Right.
This guy comes in after a year and the stuff's there, and then it's there the next time, and we'll see about tonight. But he's got his command, he's got velocity, and he's got breaking stuff that when he's it's just unhittable when he's located. And so this guy, they didn't have him all last year. Obviously, if they'd had him or anybody that could give you a semblance of big league starting
They'd be
pitching
in the
down
playoffs.
the stretch, they'd have been in the playoffs.
Right.
But this guy this year, as other teams in the league have ramped up, and as the Reds again went with depth and counted on growth from their young players, this guy, if he stays healthy all season, I don't know why he wouldn't be maybe the single biggest key to the success they have this year.
I could not agree with you more on that, Gordon. He gives me the sense, let's hope for his sake, he makes from here on out 25 starts, maybe 23, 25 starts. If that happens, I think that alone will be a major plus for the Cincinnati rotation and give them the top of the rotation guy that they really, really need. I think Frankie Montas can be that, certainly serve in that role. I think Graham Ashcraft shows flashes. What's it going to take for Hunter Greene to enter that echelon, Gordon?
I don't know. What I've seen from him so far is everything I heard. I mean, he throws the hell out of the ball hard. When his slider is on, it's no hit stuff. When he's got his slider and he's locating, he's got no hit stuff. But he didn't have it the other day. His last start, he threw a lot of fastballs. He survived. He was going to lose that game if he gave up 1 run. Well, he gave up single runs in 4 innings and wound up losing. But he went 7 innings. Starts like that, and that other one that he struggled in at home a few starts ago where he wound up going 6 after giving up 4 early. Starts like that are going to help him. But honestly, listen, I hear people say, hear his coaches and his managers say, got to have patience with the guy. Doesn't have a lot of experience compared to other guys that he got here really quick. It's way past that. I'm tired of hearing that crap because, look, man, the pitcher controls the action. Once you've learned to pitch and locate your pitches, and if they're as good as his two best pitches, you can win. You should win. So there's something that's sort of coming and going with him that's beyond, I'll say beyond physical, but that doesn't mean it's beyond mechanics. It may be his ability. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I've seen guys come in, and you've seen it too. You see 19-year-olds come in sometimes, and they just blow away the league. Start after start after start after start. He's got that kind of stuff. He's got that kind of velocity, that kind of movement on his slider. He has the ability to do that, and we've seen it. We've seen it over and over again. Where when I got this job, the first start I saw him after accepting this job, he no-hit the Cubs for 6 innings. That's what he can do any given time out. So it's not that he should do that every time out, but he should have a higher floor every time out. And that's what we're not seeing. That's what we should be seeing. And I'm tired of hearing it's about experience or that we need to have patience. It's no longer time for patience. This team needs to win now, and if you can't help them, then they need to put somebody else in that role.
I could not agree with you more. I think Hunter Greene has the stuff. There's no question about that. I think he needs an off-speed / curveball type of pitch to get hitters, because when a slider doesn't slide, it's a cement mixer. We all know this. Essentially batting practice fastball when it doesn't really break. And to me, if he could get comfortable with a changeup or have that Doc Gooden 12-6 hammer curve, to me, and I know he's trying to work on a pitch like that, I think that would transform him. But again, Gordon, he's got to be comfortable with it. And There's a lot, when I read Hunter Greene, there's a lot of nuance to his personality when he's on the mound. Mm-hmm. And you don't see that same nuance with, let's say, Graham Ashcraft, who I've heard this time and time again, him called a bulldog. And it's true. His mentality is whatever pitch is working for me, I'm going to drill it in on the hands. I'm going to pitch in and out, up and down, and, let the chips fall where they may. I want to see more of that.
Yeah, he's a thinking man's ball player. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes that works against you. What did Yogi Berra used to say? Somebody asked him, what do you think about when you go up to the plate? He said, I ain't got time to think. I can't think of anything. Now that's a hitter, and pitchers have to spend a little more time on thought. But there is something to that. Just, get the ball, throw the ball, get the ball, throw the ball. And to your point about these secondary pitches and maybe something softer, I agree with all that, except for this. He's supposedly the off-speed, air quotes, off-speed pitch that he's most comfortable with is the slider. So if that's coming and going all the time, if he can't command that start after start after start, I don't want to give him anything else to think about. I want him to be on top of that. I want that to be the thing he works on between starts. That to be the thing he works all spring on. Get that to where it's there when you need it. Like, it's not always going to be there, no matter who you are. But get it where it's there 3 out of 4 starts instead of every other one. I mean, that's the one you're comfortable with, and you can win with that. And once that's locked into place, now bring this other one in. Bring this other one in for show until you're comfortable with that. And now you've got something going.
I know you've got to get down to the clubhouse and cover the Reds when that clubhouse opens. I want to finish with this. Of all of the things that has impressed me about the Reds start, it's the resiliency. They obviously have the suspended Noelvi Marte early in spring training. That happened with the PEDs. They lost Matt McLain. They obviously lost TJ Friedl to a fractured wrist late in spring training. And understandably, their batting average is .221 as a team, and that is 28th in Major League Baseball, yet they are still finding ways to manufacture runs. A lot of that is Ellie De La Cruz. A lot of it is, you name whatever player at the top of the order here in the first month of the season. They've been pretty consistent at the top of the order, and I think that has been remarkable that they've been able to win 13 games, given the fact that they're only hitting 221 as a team.
Yeah, you mentioned the injuries. McLain and Friedl, key among them. But how about all the guys that got sick?
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Your favorite subject, Gordon.
Oh,
Go
yeah. Well, we ain't going to tell you what it is. This guy's whatever. I don't
continue. But, yes, I'm sorry I interrupted.
But it's been a revolving door of guys that have been out of the lineup because of these flu bug type things or whatever it is that's been going through the clubhouse all season. I mean, like since spring training. And so we've seen, Jonathan India more recently, Candelaria and Encarnacion Strand recently, Friedl right now. And so that's not nothing. And they got hammered pretty hard in Seattle, and that's a good pitching staff anyway. That's where they're going to have trouble, right? When you start looking at the injury losses and stuff like that, they're going to go up against some pitching staffs like that. And that's why to beat good pitching like that, you need good pitching. That's where their pitching staff's going to come into play, where it keeps them in games. They were in 2 of those Seattle games and then wound up losing late. So you're right. Watch the next month. They play Philly this week. That's a really good team. A lot of people think they're going to be back in the World Series. But they got Texas right after that, team that just won the World Series. They got San Diego on the road right after that, which is still a really good team. In the next month, they have all 7 games they're going to play against the Dodgers. They have all 7 games they're going to play against last year's World Series teams. They've got a 3-city, 10-game road trip out west, and that's always brutal for a team in the Eastern time zone. So it is a really grinder, potential soul crusher of a May coming up on the schedule, and there's nothing close to it the rest of the year. There is no stretch even close to that with no soft spots. And so that's going to tell you a lot about that resilience you're talking about. And also you're going to get TJ Friedl back at some point in that stretch. It might tell you a little bit about TJ Friedl. It might tell you something about Ellie De La Cruz, who's been their best player in April. Can he keep that up against all these good teams? Will he be the difference maker in some of those games? And it'll tell you a lot about your pitching when you face some of those, $200 and $300 and $400 million lineups.
All right. He is Gordon Wittenmyer, does a great job covering the Reds for the Cincinnati Enquirer and Cincinnati.com. Those are the 2 places you can catch all of his great coverage. Gordon, anything you're working on that you want to promote?
I got another Press Box WAG column coming in a couple of days. Watch out for that. And Jason Williams and I just did another one of our.
I love those. Those are, by the way, those are great ideas. Who came up with that, by the way?
You know what? We worked together 20 years ago in Minnesota, and we put it together then. And actually, I did it for a while with Bert Blyleven, and we went back and forth on whatever was going on with the Twins. And then Jason and I teamed up on it, and 2 of us did it. And we've got a great relationship, a great friendship over the years, so it works. And we always argue anyway, so it's perfect. We never agree on anything.
By the way, Hall of Famer Bert Blyleven, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and which he wasn't back then, and I did vote for him even before I met him because that curveball.
Correct. You know what I remember Bert Blyleven for, and Reds fans will remember this, from 1979, really the last vestiges of the Big Red Machine. It was Blyleven who struck out Cesar Geronimo with a curveball to end the 1979 National League Championship Series at Three Rivers Stadium. That's what I remember Bert Blyleven for.
He probably had the best curveball of his generation.
Yes.
And I'll tell you this too. He played on second division teams a lot. When he got to the playoffs, he did well. Go back and look. Everybody thinks like Jack Morris is a great big game pitcher, and he is.
Yeah.
Their postseason numbers, Jack Morris and Bert Blyleven, almost identical. When Bert got in those big games, he performed. And this too. You look at it and say, well, how many times did he win 20 games? How many times did he do this, that, or the other thing?
Right.
He finished second in the Cy Young Award voting in 1984. He won 19 games in his top 3 in ERA and strikeouts and all that. He finished second to the reliever in
Detroit Tigers reliever,
Willie
yes.
Hernandez.
Yes,
and
that's right.
At a time when, well, I think that time still exists. Like, you don't look at relievers first when you're voting for Cy Young Awards. The guy that logs a bunch of innings, the guy that was a horse for his team and put up great numbers as a starter, that's usually who you vote for. He missed his 20th game, and I'm convinced that back in the day when wins mattered, he missed 2 or 3 starts in the summer because he tripped on a ball shagging flies during BP and turned his ankle. He missed a couple of starts. He was pitching so well that year, I'm convinced he would have won one of them. That would have given him 20 wins, and I think a 20-win season would have won him the Cy Young that year.
I think that's a fair point, and I think that's probably the case. Well, I'm going to let you go, Gordon. Go down to the clubhouse, talk to those Reds players, and get ready for David Bell as he updates the local media on what's going on with the Reds. He is Gordon Wittenmyer. Again, follow him on Cincinnati.com and the Cincinnati Enquirer. Gordon, thanks so much.
Anytime, Mike. Thanks, man. It was fun.
All right. He's Gordon Wittenmyer. I'm Mike Petralia, Trags. Thanks for downloading this episode of Code Reds.